Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending the Labrador Employers for Ukraine Forum. My name is Julianne Griffin. I'm the CEO of the Labrador North Chamber of Commerce, and we are thrilled to host a session today in partnership with our friends and partners at Taskforce NL, and I thank you for your interest in today's session. Before introducing the team, I'd first like to acknowledge that the lands and waters on which we gather are the homelands of the Innu and Inuit of Labrador, and recognize their ancestral and continued ties to these lands and waters. Taskforce NL is doing incredible work in our province, and I'd encourage you to have a look at their website or reach out to the team if you have any questions and to learn a little bit more. Taskforce NL is now supporting the government of Newfoundland and Labrador's efforts to match workers from Ukraine with jobs in our province. The team hosted a provincial-wide session last week, which was great, and we're so pleased that they were again interested and eager to host a session with us for employers in Labrador. In this forum, presenters will explain the immigration process for Ukrainians, describe the role of employers in this process, connect employers with the provincial officials who can match employers to relevant talent, and of course, highlight how you can join a community of like-minded employers. We will offer an opportunity for questions and answers at the end of the event, so please hold questions to the end. You can place them in the chat, and then I'll moderate toward the end of the session. And with those few remarks, I'd like to turn things over to Constanza to get the session started.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for taking 1 hour of your time today to learn about and how to employ Ukrainians. My name is Constanza Zafatle. I am the new executive director at Taskforce NL, so I am the new one in the team. Also, I identify myself as an immigrant woman and as a temporary worker still. So I just want to, I think the big goal here, it is try to explain that hiring Ukrainians that come in with open work permit is something that is simple to do, is easy to do, and it's not a complex process. So encourage you to learn, to understand, and also to embrace multiculturalism in your companies or increase and that multiculturalism. And so thank you so much. And I will leave over in Courtney or Garrett, part of the staff. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Constanza. So thank you everybody for joining us. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so just an overview of the agenda. We just had the welcome from Constanza. Myself and Garrett will walk through an introduction and overview on the critical role that employers like yourselves play in helping Ukrainians. Then I'll pass it to Maggie and Cam Roll from the provincial government to talk about the visa and the process of hiring Ukrainians. Then we'll welcome Darren Dirtle from Mary Brown's, who will give his perspective as an employer who has already, hired people coming from the Ukraine. And then we'll have Monica from the Association for New Canadians. She'll jump in and talk about the settlement services that they offer. Then bring it back to myself. We'll talk about next steps, and then pass it over. Julianne will moderate the question and answer period. So first, Julianne gave a little brief introduction of who we are as Taskforce NL. We started as a group of volunteers in the initial stages of the pandemic to help respond to crisis of PPE. And so since then, we've been working and building a broad reach in the business community across all sectors and responding to other things that we see as crisis here in the province. We have a strong and committed board of directors, all with diverse business backgrounds in business, academic, different industries. But right now we are singularly focused on accelerating immigration. And so right now we see that as an opportunity to work with employers to help, support in the hiring of Ukrainians, at this very moment, but in the future, other temporary workers. So the silent crisis of our time, population. I mean, it's a, well-known fact that population is a crisis here in the province right now. The province the population of the province is expected to decline by 10% by 2036. Our population is getting older, and we're not growing as quickly as we once were. We don't have enough high school graduates to fill job vacancies in the economy. Immigration really is the key to helping us sustain the demographic mix. So we really need to exceed the average of the country, but we as a province of Newfoundland Labrador are still in catch-up mode. It's being seen, in the news all over that there's a shortage of labor, and one way that we can fix that is through immigration and the recruitment of international talent. So here are just some examples that we've seen in the news as of recently. A couple examples here on the here on the island of Newfoundland. For example, a 31-year-old restaurant in Whitburn that many of you may be familiar with actually closed due to a shortage of workers. So the warning signs are there. And so we as Taskforce NL believe that this is a crisis that is worthy of our focus. And so we believe that working with employers is a way that we as an organization can do our part to help, reverse some of the challenges that are being faced. And I'll pass it to Garrett. Oh, no, first I'll talk about the five pillars of what we're focused on. So I won't go into the details, but we've identified 5 key areas: advocacy, so that we can, listen to the challenges that are being faced by employers, and then, help have a voice in making change and addressing those challenges. Education, so doing things just like this, where we provide education on different pathways to immigration, resources that are available, bringing awareness to the processes and things of the such. Best practices, so creating an employer community, which is another, and so then we can share best practices amongst everyone, creating a community that provides support and resources, that kind of thing. And then program delivery, which we will determine as we work with employers what the needs are, and then how we can deliver programs that can help provide support to folks like yourselves.
Thank you, Courtney. So, of course, this forum is focused on Ukrainians, and we understand that there's a crisis going on, over in Europe, and we know that there's a crisis here in Newfoundland when it comes to our population. So we ask ourselves, if not now, then when? We know that international talents can help fill the gaps. We're seeing the early warning signs, as Courtney had shown, with all the different organizations or companies having to close their doors because they're not able to find staff to fill in those gaps. So now is the perfect time to kind of act as a community and help incoming Ukrainians, but also help our employers at the same time. So the Ukrainians coming are able to enter Newfoundland Labrador relatively easily and quickly, and this is in huge thanks to what the government has been doing with the assistance of ANC as well. They've made the immigration process very hassle-free, especially for employers. We know that some Ukrainians will want to settle in Newfoundland Labrador permanently. We also know that, of course, some of them are going to want to go back home once they feel safe enough to do so. But right now, our biggest challenge is acting quickly, collaborating, and also working compassionately with these incoming Ukrainians, but also with each other to help support one another throughout this journey. So we view this forum as a first step. This isn't kind of the end of what we're doing. And as Courtney mentioned, we do want to sort of generate that sense of community amongst the employers. And bring them all together and connect them with our key stakeholders, such as the government, industry associations. But essentially, we want to go through this together as if it's a journey. And, we want to support employers and bring them on this journey with us. Courtney, next slide, please. So this forum is focused on Ukrainians, and the need is overwhelming. We're seeing a huge increase in interest for Ukrainians coming to Newfoundland, especially since the chartered flight has arrived on Monday. And just to give you a little perspective as well, and Courtney, if you want to go to the next slide again. So these are some of the accommodations that a lot of the people fleeing their hometowns in the Ukraine, this is what they're living in, and a lot of them are in much worse conditions than what this looks like. So we're kind of holding back on the more graphic images of the kind of places that they have to stay in. Right now there's more than 11 million people that have been displaced. So to put that in context, just imagine if every major city and town across our province kind of had to suddenly leave. That's kind of the crisis that they're facing. So next, I'm going to pass it over to Maggie Payton and Kamrul Islam to speak a little bit about the process and the visa program from the government of Newfoundland.
Thanks, Garrett. And so my name is Maggie Payton, and I'll kind of lead on this presentation. And Kamrul Islam, my colleague here, he's our manager of labor attraction, so he's here to support on any of the Q&A. Both of us, our expertise combined, should be able to answer anything you may have for us today. So we're just going to touch on, what we've been doing and what the process looks like for Ukrainians arriving to Newfoundland and Labrador. And we can go to the next slide there. So just simply, we're going to provide an overview of the Canada-Ukraine Authorization for Emergency Travel Visa. So the QAT is the abbreviation you might hear me use throughout this presentation for that. And we're going to talk about the Newfoundland Labrador Ukrainian Family Support Desk, the job matching piece, and then how you can get involved as an employer. So just some context, and we really won't get into the nitty gritty of it because we really don't need to. This is a very streamlined visa process for individuals. So the Canada-Ukraine Authorization for Emergency Travel offers Ukrainians and their family members free, extended temporary status and allows them to work, study, and stay in Canada for up to 3 years. So once they get this visa, they're also able to apply for an open work permit, which means they can work for any employer and enables them to work for any Newfoundland and Labrador employer. The federal government has set the service standard to have an electronic visa application processed within 14 days of receipt of a complete application for standard non-complex cases. So, a complex case might be, the Cyrillic alphabet or the Ukrainian alphabet is quite different than the English alphabet. So the translation sometimes might slow things down. But for non-complex cases, it has been a very expedited process for folks to get their visas and work permits and to be able to arrive to the country. Into our province. QET holders may choose to permanently migrate or immigrate to Canada after arrival through a variety of pathways. So once folks are here, we're really anticipating, as Garrett and Courtney kind of alluded to, that folks might want to stick around and might want to stay, and they're able to do that by gaining employment and then applying through the provincial nominee and Atlantic immigration programs that our office will help facilitate. And just some numbers to give you the context on how many people are accessing this countrywide. IRCCs, that's Immigration, Refugees, Citizenship Canada, has received over 180,000 applications for this, and approximately 70,000 have been approved up to this point. So just a little bit more context on our work and what we've been doing. So on March 2nd, our government established the Ukrainian Family Support Desk. And this was primarily this email that folks can reach out to with questions, with offers of support, with offers of housing, with offers of employment. So it really triages everything to assist individuals wanting family reunification. We had a lot of people reach out to our desk wanting to get a family member here and just some information on how they could do that through federal pathways. Directing Ukrainians who wish to work in our province to employment opportunities. So that's primarily through our job matching, and then connecting employers who wish to offer employment opportunities to Ukrainians. We've had a physical presence in Warsaw since around, mid-March 2022. And that's really made a difference in folks wanting to come to our province because they're learning about it. We were joking the other day, it's classic Newfoundland. You have a cup of tea and a chat, and that's, people want to come here because they meet us and we're a great bunch. So just to give you an idea of the numbers, we have about 400 people who are receiving job matching supports across all occupations. and more than 2,000 jobs posted to the desk across sectors and regions. And we're assisting with matching people to opportunities, so resumes and interviews. And I guess I really want to highlight in terms of the job matching process and what it looks like to contextualize it for you is an employer will reach out. They'll provide us, with their information that we're asking around vacancy, a little bit more information about their jobs, and then that will be considered registered, and then they'll be reconnected once we have a resume or a client that matches what that employer is looking for. So that's just a little bit about how the process looks like behind the scene. So we can go to the next slide there. In addition to some of the job matching services, on April 29th, we've launched an online service registration form. So this is for any Ukrainian who's traveling to the province. Many of them have connected to our office, but many of them also haven't. They might have been connecting through a family friend connection, but this is a way for us to capture and have an understanding of everybody who's arriving to our province, but also enabling them to be connected to government services and settlement supports from the Association for New Canadians. And the online form is available in Ukrainian and English. And really important, I'm not done that one yet. And really importantly, and you'll hear from Association for New Canadians, we are working with the province on settlement supports for all those arriving, including housing search, assistance, language training, and pre-arrival supports. And many of you may have seen the news earlier in this week that we welcomed the first charter into Canada, into St. John's, Newfoundland on Monday, May 9th. And it was an incredible opportunity for folks to arrive to our province. And now they're here and they want to get to work. So it's great to be here for this conversation. I think that's all from me. Yeah. So this is our contact here. This is our Ukrainian family desk. This is our main office line, and then our website information.
Perfect. Thanks, Maggie. We were at the airport actually on Monday when the charter flight arrived, and it was quite amazing to see the community support there in the airport as we welcomed our new friends. So now I'll pass it over to Darren from Mary Brown's, and maybe he could give some insight from an employer who's gone through the process already.
Sure. Thank you so much, Courtney. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Just wanted to take a minute, I guess. Well, thank you, Courtney and Constanza, for inviting me to join today. Mary Brown's has been an employer that, we've already had our first Ukrainian land on Monday, and he's the gentleman that we had hired 2 weeks previous. He's pretty much ready to start now at Mary Brown's in St. John's. So to take you through the whole process, we reached out to the Ukrainian Family Support Desk and to the Office of Immigration back in mid-March, as soon as the help desk was established. And, we started really early in the sense of awareness that, Mary Brown's is looking to support Ukrainian people coming to the province and that sort of thing. Right away, we started to get some job matching, resumes and candidates come in from some of the officers at the Office of Immigration. And we just started to, sort of select an interview based on experience and skill levels and that sort of thing. So for us, the process was very easy. Once an officer reached out to us with the resumes, we quickly, interviewed and made offers. So right now, we've currently got 6 offers out there as of yesterday that have been signed off with Ukrainian refugees. Some that are already here in Newfoundland. One gentleman came on Monday, and the rest are still either in Poland or nearby waiting to travel. So, the process was very quick. We interviewed, we selected the candidate, we made an employment offer, and in less than 2 weeks, our first arrival was here. And it was quite, I was at the airport on Monday night. It was quite a spectacular scene and a very moving scene for sure. But, to be able to sit down on Tuesday with someone that you met, over Zoom 2 weeks prior, and he's sitting in front of you in a new country, ready to start work. There was no better feeling from my perspective to be able to have a part in bringing him to Newfoundland and Labrador, and then start the process of, a new life, a new start, a fresh beginning in a safe, place. So the process has been very, very quick and easy. And, I did 2 interviews before this call today that were facilitated by, the Office of Immigration, with 2 other individuals that we made offers to as well that are going to, come in as soon as possible. So the process is easy and simple. Depending on, the approval on the travel authorization visa, a lot of people over there already have it and are just waiting for a job offer or waiting for a flight. So it's been a very positive experience for Mary Brown's, and we're quite excited about being able to continue to support Ukrainians, in the coming weeks and months ahead. So that's been a big part for us over the last couple of weeks. But the folks at the Office of Immigration and ANC have been, very supportive and helpful when it comes to helping facilitate or set up, or, if there's been any communication issues, because a lot of people are sort of in limbo in Poland right now with communications and things like that. So I know our team on the ground in Warsaw have been, amazing at facilitating and trying to assist where they can with helping connect us to those potential employees. So I guess that's sort of it in a nutshell for me.
Perfect. Thanks, Darren. And at the end, maybe there are some employers here who have some more questions. So
absolutely.
We'll leave those for the end. And right now, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, and then I'll pass it over to Monica from the ANC.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you here. Just waiting for the slides.
There we go.
So I'd like to welcome you all, of course, and a big thank you to Taskforce NL for their wonderful work, as always, putting together these wonderful events. It's really great to actually get a chance to talk to all of you as employers, and to see your interest in supporting these groups is always warming for our hearts. So from all of us to all of you, a really big thank you. So for today, I'm going to really speak to the services that we're providing for Ukrainians. But of course, as always, we see arrivals from all around the world. In fact, just this weekend, we're expecting a large group of Afghan refugees. And so we do see the really important role for employers in supporting all newcomers. But we are really gifted and blessed to have the work of Office of Immigration here in Newfoundland and the chance to actually work with Ukrainian arrivals. So I'll speak to that a bit more today. So next slide, please. A little bit about us, if you haven't had a chance to get to know us yet. The Association for New Canadians is a nonprofit organization, and we are actually in Newfoundland and in Labrador. We've been around for over 40 years now and have been delivering programs in resettlement, which is mostly focused on refugees, but also on settlement and language and employment services for all groups of newcomers. Next slide, please. And I think there's some really important key things that we do that are good for you folks to know. So we have a really robust set of programs, as I mentioned, but really specifically, we work with over 150 employers, sorry, that should say employers, not employees, but employers and their employees every year, and have a really strong employment program, which I'll speak to in a minute, that really helps connect newcomers with jobs, but also give them the skills and the supports they need to be able to maintain those jobs. And we work with at least 500 volunteers. I have a feeling that about 500 volunteers have stepped up to support Ukrainians at this point in time, which is so amazing and speaks to And I think for this group, what's really helpful is we have offices around all of Newfoundland and Labrador. So, Corner Brook, Grand Falls, Windsor, Labrador West, Fort Tow, Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Clarenville, St. Anthony. And so we really have touch points that can support you as employers when you are working with folks who are moving outside of St. John's, which we anticipate the Ukrainians will likely do. From a government-sponsored and private-sponsored refugee perspective, we are one of the 44 organizations that are contracted to support that group. And in many ways, although the Ukrainians are arriving on visas, they have a lot of refugee-like needs. So we're very much tapped into the refugee programs, and we are looking at, or a lot of our work is to bring the trauma-informed approaches that we take in our refugee work to this population. And I will leave it there, but there's lots more that we can talk about in another presentation. Next slide, please. This is just an overview. I know you're getting a copy, so I'm not going to read this, but I'll leave it in your good hands if you want the details of all the programs. Our website is really helpful with some of these areas, but I think it's really nice to have a snapshot in your hands around what we do. And I'm going to circle back to the employment pieces in a minute. But in the top right-hand corner there, you can see our employment-specific supports. And we really do start with the newcomer where they're at. So some people are job ready and are really kind of just looking for a bit of resume help and to get plugged in, whereas other folks need to learn the language, they need to understand work culture in Canada, and they need to do all the employment readiness piece. And then we always see in any group really that there's a lot of help that people maybe need in job maintenance. And it's not that they're looking to leave those jobs, but life happens like any of us. You know, like I can say that as a Canadian, that has happened to me in my employment. And I wish I had the supports that our employment services offers for newcomers when that has happened to me in my life. And it's just a way to make sure that people are able to stay in their jobs. We also support a lot of employers themselves with services, including anything from diversity training to on-site language learning. There are ways that we can support you in your work with newcomers as well. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to get into this because Maggie did a really brilliant job of giving you an overview. Well, not just Maggie, also all of the presentations from Taskforce NL today were phenomenal. I learned a lot as well. But I think there's some key touch points that make our work a little bit different. And mostly just that, as Maggie said, and our colleagues at Taskforce NL said, the Office of Immigration Multiculturalism actually set up an office in Poland. And this made our work really different this time around from other chartered arrivals, where we were actually able to do a lot of pre-employment supports. And we're not just supporting those who come on the province's charters, but anyone that the office is connecting with overseas is being referred to us before they even land in Canada for services. So I'll go to the next slide where I'll give you a bit more information. So the kinds of people that we're seeing approach us for services include Ukrainians that were already in Newfoundland and Labrador. That includes international students, temporary foreign workers, visitors. These folks were already here and they are able to apply now for this 3-year visa to stay in Canada and have an open work permit. We also seen people come on this open work permit, or the CUAT, the Canadian Ukrainian Emergency Authorization for Travel visa. And these people are arriving with the 3-year open work permit. And then we're also seeing a group of people who are accessing our services, who are people that were already in the pipeline, so to speak, with immigration, where they had applied to come as a visitor or grandparent or parent. And these folks, their applications were expedited when the invasion started in Ukraine so that they would have a safe haven here in Canada. So we are seeing not just an interest in employment from those that are arriving on the charter, but also those that OIM is facilitating outside of the charter and people here already in Newfoundland. So you have a really beautiful pool of employees to pull from. And I can say now, having met with them, as you can hear my voice, I'm losing it, but having met with lots of folks over the last few days, they're not only excited, but they're incredibly skilled. And it is an absolute pleasure to be able to support this group with employment. And this is true not only of our Ukrainian folks, but also of our Afghan arrivals that we've seen last week and the ones that are coming. We have a mixed bag of people, Ukrainian, Afghan, or otherwise, who are English speakers, who are employment ready. And then you're always going to have those who need the extra support to get to a place where they're employment ready. What we know also is that there's a plan for family reunification of these files with IRCC, but the reasons it's in a different color is because we don't yet have the details. Next slide, please. So what is our response? So I already kind of mentioned the pre-arrival support, the case management and settlement planning that we're doing to help people before they come. These are people that OIM has identified for our team, and then we are linking in with them to get them ready to come to Canada. And then when they arrive, we're doing, resettlement-like. So it's not exactly the program that's delivered to the government-assisted refugees, but it's really similar. And this includes some temporary accommodation. We refer them and assess them for their different needs, connect them with key government documents. So for example, for their social insurance number, next week, there will be a clinic where everyone gets to come and get their social insurance numbers done. And then they're eligible for OIM and IRCC, so provincial and federally funded services. So they will be able to access other supports, including employment support, but also language instruction and ongoing settlement services once they move to their permanent home. And then we're doing a lot of work with our community. As mentioned, more than, I haven't quantified it. So I'm sure there's hundreds, if not maybe even 500 volunteers at this point who have come out to support us. Lots of interest in donations. And we're working with a business here locally to stand up a donation center, which will hopefully be available in the coming days. And then doing a lot of work with the media to help people understand the arrivals of Ukrainians, along with other groups that have come. Some more details about our services, and I'm not, for the sake of time, I'm not going to kind of read this slide, but again, it's there for you to make reference. But we do spend a lot of time with our guests that are staying with us, but also those who aren't staying with us, to just give them information about life in Canada. What is the health system? What is the education system? And then we link them with those services where possible. So all of these folks are getting, for example, the province has very generously extended the medical program, MCP and PDP, so the prescription drugs, and the medical benefit program for the province is being extended to them. We're also looking at how can we access driver's licenses, and our provincial counterparts are doing a lot of work with the Ukrainian embassy on this area. So we're really working to get them able to settle, but also have access to the things they need to be successful in their lives here in Newfoundland, and really importantly in their jobs, because we know that employment for temporary residents leads to permanent residence. So we really want to help them be successful. Next slide, please. Specific to our employment services, we have kind of these three streams of employment services in our agency. So employment counseling kind of is the and ongoing work that is done one-on-one with clients, everything from helping them develop their resume to assessing their credentials so that they're ready to work in their industry as closely as possible, or parallel industry where their skills will be well used. We get them ready for that work by giving them, workshops on everything from like interview prep to how to communicate in the workplace, how to manage your money so that you're successful. And we do a lot of work around matching with jobs and onboarding, but that includes services available to help people maintain their employment so that if they're having any issues, they're getting supports along their journey so that they can reach their full potential. Next slide, please. So I'll leave you with these contacts. Again, you should be receiving a copy of this, so you'll have these in your inbox, but I'm happy to also speak to any questions. I know a common question that also came up at our last Taskforce NL event was about why these folks don't get refugee status. And the short answer is because it's really complicated in international law. The long answer can take 5 or so 10 minutes to explain it, and I'm happy to explain that if that is needed for this group as well. But really it is the way that international law is set up for the movements of people that make it challenging for that to be extended. But it's also probably really helpful that these folks come in as under the visa program, because as I mentioned earlier, with an employment offer, there are ways for them to become permanent residents, and often that can be faster than the refugee program. So in general, a resettlement of a refugee can take 5 to 10 years. I've seen cases 12 years waiting to come to get to a place where they can be resettled. A refugee claim can take anywhere from 2 to 5 years. So this is a much faster pathway to permanency for these folks. So So I'll leave that there, but thank you, Taskforce NL, again, for all of your brilliant work. And we're so, so pleased to partner with you and OIM to be able to support this really, really wonderful group. If I could tell you all the funny stories and the laughter that we've had for the last 3 days with these incredible folks, it is really been a true joy to provide them this support. They're really, really keen. They're such happy new Newfoundlanders, and they talk about the quality of life that they know they will have here. And it really warms our heart when we get to see the difference that these folks are already feeling just in the kindness and the welcomeness that all of you have shown. And a really special thank you to Darren Dirtle from Mary Brown. Darren, I've heard such great things about your interview from your candidates. And a really, really big thank you to you and Mary Brown's, because we know that you're making such a difference in our work. And it really, we couldn't do this without people like you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Monica. It's always good to hear all of the services that are offered by the ANC, and we're so, I guess, grateful as an organization to be working alongside all of the organizations here. So in terms of next steps for you folks as employers, you can reach out to register with the province at the ukrainianfamily@gov.nl.ca email address. We urge you to join the Taskforce NL Ukrainian Employer Roundtable. So like I mentioned back at the beginning, the 5 pillars that we're focused on, and we want you to be a part of that employer community. We urge you to fill out our survey. So the link is www.taskforcenl.com/first-step. From there, we're looking to collect some data, such as, what kind of positions you're looking to hire for, how better we can help you with providing what kind of resources that you need, that kind of thing. And then also some feedback on the session, if it was helpful, how we could have made it better, all of the great things that happened, you name it. And then we really urge you to consider hiring Ukrainians. So Monica talked about all of the great things the community has been able to do since coming together. So this is an example that comes from the Newfoundland and Labrador Helps Host for Ukrainians Facebook group of a little girl who got her own bed here in the province a few weeks ago. But also there's been all of the talk about the charter that arrived. So we included a few pictures from the airport the other day that, was so, I guess, such a heartwarming place to be. So these are some examples of things that can happen when we all come together. So here's our team. We encourage you to follow us on social media. We're, already sharing different ways that you can stand up to support, and then our contact information in case you want to reach out to us at any time, maybe regarding anything that happened during the session or any of the other work that we're doing here at Taskforce NL. So I'll pass it back to Julianne now to moderate the Q&A session.
Thanks so much, Courtney, and thanks to all of you for the incredible presentations and the wonderful work you're doing. You're definitely making an impact, and it's so good to hear that the first plane has landed, and it's great to hear that they're excited about the opportunities here. So if anyone has any questions for anyone, feel free to use the chat, or you can raise your hand and go ahead. I was just wondering, and I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, were on the ground. How was the feeling and how was the experience when the plane landed, and how did everything go when they arrived?
I guess I can speak to that, because we, of course, as the province, we organized most of the logistics for this, and then arranged our partnership with the Association for New Canadians to support the arrival as well. We'll say Association for New Canadians, they are very used to having large arrivals arrive, so they have that expertise. But I would say it was very seamless with everybody came together, and it was just a feeling of optimism. Everybody was so hopeful. Everybody was so excited to be here. People were tired, long journeys, of course. But yeah, it was all, people were so optimistic and excited, and really just felt welcome. There was a lot of people from the public there as well, welcoming folks. There was a junior high there that just wanted to come and show their support, and lots of that. Lots of folks brought their pets, which was lovely. So for those of you on the call, that's not very common in refugee resettlement. Pets aren't often able to come, and we know we can think about that from a mental health perspective, how comforting to have your pet with you it might be for folks settling here. So it was just it was beautiful. I can't speak for everyone else. So I was at the airport and then connected with folks when they went to the hotel. So Monica might be able to speak to some of those pieces as the service provider. And I know Taskforce friends, you were there as well. So feel free to jump in.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's just been lovely. It's been such a great few days. Folks are like really like they, you know, we always concerned, for example, about quarantine and isolation, but everybody's self-managing that with no problems. Like they're just really a happy bunch. They're just really happy to be here. Quite a few of them talked to us about the fact that living in Warsaw or Kiev, they really thought they would be drawn to a bigger city, but getting here, they realized how much calm Newfoundland brings them. And the kindness that they felt from the OIM staff to the hotel staff, that everyone's just been so super in receiving them, and that they really feel welcomed and at home and at peace here. And you almost can see it in people's faces too, a sense of calm. And that's just a really kind, like wonderful thing to feel. And then there's nothing better than the laughter of children running up and down the hallways at the hotel, or, you know, ripping down our signs, which is great because we know that they're active and they're busy. We'd rather them do that stuff than be quiet and in their rooms, you know? So everything's been just really lovely so far. And I feel like I'm jinxing it every time I speak about it, but I just really feel blessed to have had this opportunity. And this is true with the Ukrainians and the Afghans. Our Afghan clients are just, it's so humbling to be around these people. And it really reminds us about the privilege that we have as Canadians to not have to go through what these folks have lived through. And then, as I said, there's like the smiling faces, the children playing, all of these moments remind us we're all human. And that has been just such a gift. It's why we do this work, but it's really humbling to be around these two specific groups, especially these last few months.
Yeah, thank you, Monica. I can add from the side of Taskforce NL, was our first experience being there, and was like, I think an historic moment, even like for our life, personal life. I just want to stand out that it is crazy to think that you see so many families with one bag or two bags. And I work in the not-for-profit sector, and many times it is that exercise to reflect if something happened to your country or to you, and you have 10 minutes to get your things in your house and put in a bag, what you will put there. And see families arriving with one bag remind me that reflections. So, and I really want to encourage to think about it, because be safe in a safe space means to like live in a safe, in an economic way, right? And they are refugees with the status as a temporary workers, open work permit. That means that they don't have same benefits that sometimes when you arrive as a refugee. That's why we need to help. And also the process when you hiring a temporary worker come from the part and the side of the employer to ask about the permanent resident and provide that information to the immigrants and help them in that process. And I know that the Office of Immigration and Multiculturalism have people in place to help you to navigate that process, because usually the provincial nominee program take 2 years and they have a visa for 3 years. Probably things will be changed on the time, but we need to stand up and help in that process. And you have the help of Association of New Canadians, Office of Immigration, and we want to help you to navigate in that process as well. So encourage you to start with that action. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Constanza. And it's funny, I just had a conversation with someone yesterday about that process and understanding and encouraging the fact that, you know, employers have a role to play as well. So if they do hire newcomers or temporary foreign workers, to, you know, the end goal really is to get them to, you know, receive their PR. So there's definitely a role that I think everyone, you know, can and should play kind of in that regard. We got a couple of questions in the chat. The first one for Monica from Susie. She was wondering about certification and credential recognition, wondering how your organization helps Ukrainians, how easy it might be, how long it would take to transfer credentials, and if it costs anything for the Ukrainians during this process.
So I'll be fully transparent that I am not the right person to answer that question because I'm the director of settlement, and my colleague who's the director of employment, who will know all the nitty-gritty details about those programs, would be able to speak more to that. But in general, I think what we're seeing is quite a broad range of credentials that need to be recognized. And as Joan quite readily said in the chat, there are different timelines, and some are easier to be recognized than others. And what we've noticed with this group is it's a really broad array of skills and credential requirements. So yes, naturally, it will take different timelines for different people. At the moment, there are no special processes or costs being waived around employment costs for Ukrainians. There are pathways that are available, for example, or ways that we can address these issues. But to my knowledge, and I know Kamrul is on the phone, so he might be able, or on the call, to speak more eloquently than I to that process. But at least, and maybe Kamrul, correct me if I'm wrong, is there anything special going on around cost waiving for credential recognition? Because I haven't seen anything from Wes and those key partners on that. No. We're also ahead of the game in Newfoundland, I should say. So a lot of these things are being worked out. We are the first charter, and a lot of these things, people are now scrambling to quickly figure out how to do those things. So it's kind of nice to be ahead of the ball, but sometimes it means we have more questions than answers. So I will just put that out as a caveat. I'm finding that true across all of the areas of the work that we do in many different ways. But Kamrul, you're really the pro on this area on the call. So could you speak to that question?
First of all, Monica, you give me more credit than I actually deserve. But yes, Monica, you've framed it well. We are the first province or jurisdiction to take on this wholesome initiative. It is a worthwhile initiative. What I can tell you right now is the process for credentialing has not changed, but we are in talks with employers, for example, the healthcare employers or the engineering sector, to see how best we can streamline the credentialing process for Ukrainians who are coming into the country, who are coming into the province, and who wish to continue to practice in their profession. So right now, all I can say is the talks are at the preliminary stages. They will take some time because regulatory agencies, as you know, they are an empire of their own. And we do, there are certain barriers that we do have to overcome. But this whole Ukrainian initiative has given us the impetus to move forward and forge ahead in recognizing that the talents international individuals or internationally educated individuals bring to the country are needed, and there is an urgency for us to recognize their credentials sooner rather than later. Otherwise, we are going to lose them to other jurisdictions or maybe to other nations where the process is more streamlined than ours.
Thank you so much for clarifying.
Yes, thank you for that. And I guess, can we kind of keep on that topic for a little bit? There are labor shortages across basically every sector. Some have come to the kind of limelight more than others, like nursing and ECEs, as Joan had said. Yes. In terms of training and skills and certification, what types of, training and skills does this particular group have? I'm assuming it's right across the board.
That is my understanding as well. It is right across the board. Again, just to give you a simple example, generally speaking, when we do our recruitment mission and we are trying to hire international candidates for example, the healthcare sector, the easiest way for many healthcare individuals to come to the province or come to Canada is through a non-regulated profession avenue. For example, here we have PCAs, personal care attendants. So we may have someone who's got a nursing background or who's got a nursing diploma, but they're unable to practice as a nurse right now as we speak. So for the easiest way for them would be to transition to a PCA program, which is non-regulated. And while they're employed by the employer may be in a position to assist them to upskill their credentials and eventually become an LPN or an RN. That is something that we need to discuss urgently with the employer. And in some cases, not the Ukrainian mission, but with the other recruitment missions that I've been involved in, the employers have stepped up and were able to support the employees through their credentialing process. So that is one way of bringing someone in or allowing someone to enter the healthcare field in an expeditious manner without having to go through the regulatory process from the get-go.
Okay, great, thank you. That's really interesting. Any other questions for the team? Don't be shy. In terms of logistics, I don't know if this is a question for ANC or not, but it seems like those who arrived initially this week landed in St. John. So what would the process be like for other jurisdictions who want to recruit and attract? Would it be similar to, if you recruited someone for your organization to Goose Bay who lives in St. John's? I'm just wondering about logistics and for the folks on the line who might be wondering about that.
So I'm not sure I'm clear what you mean by logistics, if you could unpack that a little.
Yeah, so if there are employment opportunities in Happy Valley Goose Bay, for example, and businesses here are looking to hire Ukrainians who are perhaps landing on a plane in St. John's, what would the logistics look like for that employer who is looking to attract that individual to relocate to Goose Bay?
So, I mean, I think and maybe Maggie and Cameron might know more about kind of the plan for this, but I do think that, I mean, from an interview perspective, a lot of folks are doing those virtually and are providing the supports virtually. And then as we get more clarity about the intentions of our clients on where they want to live, then we develop unique plans for each client. Right? So some of those folks have the financial means to be able to pay for a plane or to pay for a bus to get to that neighborhood, and other folks don't, and so in some cases, like an Atlantic Immigration Program client, employers might be in a position, and we have had, from my understanding from my chats with Maggie, we've had some employers who've said, yes, we can pay for the travel, we can pay for the first few months of accommodations. Other employers have said to us that they can't, and so we respect that, and we work with each unique case then to develop their case plan. So that can be, we have offers, for example, of accommodations from Newfoundlanders across the entire province, both mainland and island, So we would be able to then look at making those matches happen, but where someone has gainful employment, then finding housing where they're paying rent is also more feasible. So we've been having those conversations. We've partnered, for example, with Killam Properties, who is offering 3 months free rent for Ukrainians when they have the space to take them up, of course. So it's a lot harder in St. John's, but where they have buildings outside St. John's, they have lots of vacancy. Right? So those could be really good pull factors to bring Ukrainians to your communities, because now it's a free apartment for 3 months. And of course, then with the support of volunteers, our lovely colleagues across this table, as well as our own work, we would look at leveraging donations of both furniture and money to be able to, for those moving outside of St. John's, then they can purchase what they need. So it is a really unique case by case kind of thing. We've seen all kinds of offers. And we're really thankful to those employers who've made the settlement plans work, and I've seen some magic happen in some of these cases where housing has been extended, flights have been extended. And I think that that's where people then feel welcomed, and then they really want to stay. Like that really helps with retention when people know they have support and that their support isn't only in St. John's, Cameron, do you want to add? Because you've been connecting a lot directly with people and employers.
No, I think you've covered it well.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Maggie, did you have anything to add, or?
Oh, she took the words right out of my mouth. She took the words right out of my mouth, literally, in some cases. So
okay.
I think she read our script, Maggie.
No, I didn't.
We're a great team. We love our community partners.
Yeah.
It's all good.
That's great. That's really helpful. Thank you. And there's a question from Jennifer.
There was a couple of questions I had that got answered just then with the conversation, but I was wondering about, like, there's mixed levels of education that people would be looking for jobs for. Like with the Friendship Center, we have what I call ground level, entry level positions that may be available. And we are trying to pay people a living wage of at least $15 an hour. Now, is that the kind of wage that would be appropriate for people if we were going to hire Ukrainians? Or is there an expectation that it would be a higher level? Like it would be, before we start thinking about, we know what we would be able to afford to pay. So I'm just wondering, is there an expectation that you would have to pay more than $15 an hour in an entry level position?
So we would view that really as an opportunity for the employer and the employee to have that conversation, and the employer to offer the individual what they're able to offer, and then the individual choosing that offer based on their need or not. That's what we would view that. Yeah.
So it depends on it. The answer is really, it depends on the situation of who's available, right? Okay, so when somebody is hired, do they have to stay with you for a certain length of time if you're providing anything like housing or accommodations or anything like that? Or is it just like a regular employment contract with anybody else?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And do you know if there's any interest in going to rural areas like Happy Valley Goose Bay?
Yeah, there is definitely. There's some people who are explicitly asking for it. Okay. And so what we're doing to make sure that families feel ready to make that decision in an informed way is we've actually put together, we have satellite offices. So our colleagues that are out in Happy Valley Goose Bay, for example, they will be presenting to the whole group about what it's like to live in rural Newfoundland and Labrador. And we see this as a way of not only informing them about what to expect, but as a way to support retention in those areas. So if people have a really honest and not the fantasy picture, but the real picture of what it's like to live in smaller communities, then they're able to be more prepared for that. And they're able to make that decision and not after a few months decide to come back to the city, you know? So that's what we're doing to try to make sure that when they then make a match, for example, with the Labrador Friendship Center, that it is the right match for them, you know? And as we suggested before, Jennifer, there's people with all levels of employment experience and skills, from the entry level to people that are pilots and marine engineers. So you have like the whole gamut. So I think that those offers are still really important so that we don't lose the people who aren't the engineers and the pilots in the group, but who do need an entry level position. So, and we'd love to perhaps work with all of you on what that looks like, you know? So we will definitely link in with Taskforce to link in with you folks to help us help the newcomers understand when they're signing up where they're signing up for, because I think it's beautiful, and I think they just need to know that, you know, I think that that is a choice they're making, right?
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Monica. And April just asked a question and Courtney responded, but just for anyone's benefit who didn't see the chat, she said, is the first step for an employer in recruitment to register with Taskforce NL? And Courtney said, if you register with us, we'll share your job opportunity with IPGS for matching. So yes, so that's perfect. I'd say a lot of people were kind of wondering where to start because you're all so helpful that I'm sure if they reached out to any of you, they would, they'd get the help that they needed. So we've got about 1 minute left. So what I'll do, I just want to thank everyone again. Just such incredible presentations. You're all very passionate about the work that you do, which is wonderful. And so glad to hear that everyone who landed is just getting, you know, the Newfoundland and Labrador kind of first class welcome, which we're known for. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. And I guess I'll turn it over to Constanza if she wanted to just provide a few maybe closing remarks on the session, but I just want to thank you all for your time. It's very, very helpful. The session's recorded, so I'll send it out again and we'll make sure that all of our members in the business community certainly receive a copy of the event. So Constanza, if you want to say a few words to wrap up.
Yeah, will I be able to say something before Constanza?
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted you to know that as a person that was born and raised in Happy Valley Goose Bay, I know that and people that work here too, or moved here in recent years, knows that the workforce that we have available to us to work is not very high at all. There's a lot of jobs that we cannot get filled. And also I think that once someone gets in a position, there's also, like with the Friendship Center, I know there's also room for movement. And even if someone is just wanted to come and work, and I know they would find work here, even if they didn't have something offered to them, if they want to work, anybody that wants to work in Happy Valley Goose Bay is working. If you don't want to work, then you're not working. But there's so many jobs out there that if you want to work, you can get a job. And that's even, you know, I know there's a couple of contractors on here too. It's like you can hardly get anyone to bid on contracts for you for getting work done, you know, if they even wanted to do something like that, that if they had the credentials and stuff. But there's lots of work.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Yes, I think, you know what, this is a great opportunity. They come here with children, they come here to settle like for long term maybe. So I think like it can happen that a community of employers come together and can offer something for 5 different Ukrainian families, and they can go as a community there to support each other, to navigate as a peer. You know, I think it is a great opportunity and to like grow the community outside St. John's. And I really want to thank everyone, especially the government and Monica from ANC. I imagine how busy you are right now, working and coordinating so many things. So thank you so much. And for all the employers, I will encourage them to be part of the community of employers that we are building. And it's not easy to navigate. It's not easy. Go outside your zone of comfort and integrate multiculturalism. I am an immigrant. I work with other newcomer immigrants, and I just can share as a business owner too that the experience is amazing. And hiring a temporary worker is easy. It doesn't have any cost involved. It doesn't have any risk involved. So I will encourage you to touch base with the Office of Immigration if you have any question about it, because it's not a hard or complex process to do. And then encourage you to navigate the process in how to give Ukrainians the permanent residence through the provincial nominee program or the Atlantic and immigration program. So thank you so much, and follow us in social media. We are trying to highlight employers that are hiring in Ukrainians and highlighting their experience and also what is going on here in our province. So thank you so much.
Thank you again, everyone. Have a great day.